Hi, you are listening to a podcast by Turningpoint Leadership. Through inspiring stories, we will talk about leadership development and executive coaching. Thank you for listening.
You are an executive, you are a manager, a high potential, a coach, a HR or learning and development specialist, or you are simply interested in learning more about coaching, this podcast is our gift for you. I am Véronique Girma, a senior executive coach, and I have been managing partner of Turningpoint Asia for 10 years, based in Hong Kong. I have the pleasure to share this moment today with Dr. Anna Lobach. Anna, you are a business psychologist, you are a leadership specialist, and a doctoral researcher in organizational psychology with the University of London, and you are a senior executive coach. Also, with me today is Marc Gosselin. Marc, you are part of the Turningpoint Executive Coach community. You have an impressive career that started with roles in marketing, sales, and research and development in multinational companies. You then moved to the role of country general manager with the group Danone, and you had local and regional scopes. All right, I will start with you, Anna. I would love to hear from you a story of a coaching work where you experienced or witnessed a turning point.
Thank you so much, Véronique. It's wonderful to be with you today, actually. I remember a particular program of work that we did with a group of women. It was a women in leadership program. The client was one of the largest banking groups in the world, and this was a group of 14 women, all of them with MD level roles, ages between 35 and 50. And this was an initiative that was designed to support the growing leadership bench. And the bank needed to do this work because there was, at the time, only one woman in a board position, really low representation at executive levels. And this program was really designed to support this particular group of women who were seen as incredible talent, great potential for leadership positions in the organization, and to really help them unlock their strengths, unlock their ambition, and to help them design their own professional and personal development path.
And I'm curious, Anna, what are the turning points that you witnessed?
Well, there were a series of turning points that emerged not only from one or two women, but overall across the group. So I remember this one story in particular, Véronique, of one of the women that were part of the program. Let's call her Susan for the sake of confidentiality. And one of the themes that she brought to me in a coaching session was the fact that, she was the only woman on her team. And one day she says to me, Anna, I'm the only woman, but I'm actually one of the most senior members of the team. I have the most expertise across the team in this particular area. But despite the fact that I'm one of the most senior members of the team, I always get stuck every time we have team meetings and we're either working together on projects or we're preparing presentations to the board on a particular project. I always end up stuck with NPTs.
NPT, what that's, Anna?
An NPT, she said to me, is a non-promotional task. Okay. She said, Anna, NPTs is like when we're in a team meeting and I'm always being asked to do the coffees and the teas for the meeting. Or even when we're preparing a presentation for the board, I'm always the one who ends up doing slides or working on the actual PowerPoint or even the agenda of the meetings. When we are in the meetings, Anna, I'm always asked to take notes in the meetings. And I'm one of the most senior members of this team. But there's a real sense that there's just limited opportunities for growth for me. And despite the strengths that I know that I have, despite the value that I know I can bring to the table, even being on this program, Anna, is confusing to me. Because I feel like despite all of these good intentions from the organization, this problem feels to me very systemic because it's been happening. It always happened. And I don't really know how to get out of this box. It feels like my team puts me in this box that is very difficult for me to get out of it.
This sounds to be a familiar comment that we hear right from women in many organizations.
Absolutely, because despite the fact that, women have really worked their way through to the workforce, the number of women in senior positions is still very, very low. And this was certainly the case in this organization. Another theme that emerged that Susan and then the other women on the program kept bringing the same themes was this lack of role models at senior levels. This fact that there were no female role models in leadership positions that have been through the same path and that they could connect with, they could relate with, or even they could look up to. So this started to have an impact on how they were feeling about themselves.
So as a coach, what did you do during the program to actually capture what was emerging and work with it?
Well, one of the main things that we did in this program was to create a space, an environment that was psychologically safe. And then one story leads to another and to another. And that's the power of the collective experience. And finally, there's a moment of actual turning points when you start asking them, I remember this one story, this other woman, let's call her Jennifer for the sake of confidentiality again. When I asked all the women, in fact, have there been any turning points already between Seminar 1 and Seminar 2? And Jennifer shares this incredible story with us, where she said that, well, actually, during Seminar 1, I shared this opportunity that I just received from my manager with my peers in my group. And this thing happened. So she had been offered a promotion without a salary increase. And the promotion was a massive step up, huge responsibilities, managerial responsibilities as well. It was a big step up in terms of work demands. But there was absolutely no salary increase. And when she shared that in Seminar 1 with her group of colleagues, they all encouraged her to actually fight for a salary increase. They said, listen, you have these strengths, you have this added value that you can bring, you have this opportunity, which means they feel that you are the right person for the job. So why not really fight for it and tell your conditions, this is what I need to do the job. So she was encouraged in Seminar 1 to do that, and she did that. She went to her manager and she said, listen, these are my strengths and this is the value that I bring, but these are my conditions. And her manager shut it down. She pushed back, and the manager said, no, actually, this is it. We don't have that planned. And maybe a few months down the line, maybe that will happen, et cetera, et cetera. And she said that she went home that day feeling very discouraged, back to the same place where she was before the program, before receiving that encouragement and that awareness of her strengths, et cetera. That night, she had to make a decision. She said to herself, listen, this is a turning point for me. I either go back to where I was before in a place of fear that, if I start putting conditions, pushing my conditions, maybe they will take it away from me. Maybe I wasn't really the right person for the job. Maybe I don't really deserve, blah, blah, blah. Or I go back and I believe in myself and I say, listen, these are my boundaries. This is what I need. Let's go. I want to do it, but these are my conditions.
But then it takes a lot of courage to do so. And she got her courage, if I understand well, from her peers.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. She felt empowered, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, she really did. And that was the turning point for her. And she said to the group, when she shared what happened, she said, ladies, I actually did it. I went back to the manager the next day and I said, these are my conditions. And then the manager asked for another day to think about it. So she had a period of 24 hours of freaking out, thinking, oh no, I've just lost it. And the next day, the manager came back to her and said, you got it. Okay, fine. You can, take the job and we will give you the salary increase that you want. And that was a real turning point for her that also encouraged the group throughout the journey that these things were possible and that they needed to believe in themselves.
Great story, great example of positive energy that was given to her through the group, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And tell me, you were mentioning Susan at the start of your story. What about Susan?
So with Susan, it was a similar experience, actually. After the sessions and after discovering this power that she has to make choices and to voice her choices, she went back to her team leader and to her colleagues, in fact. And every time she was asked to do an NPT, she actually reminded them that, maybe it's not only me that can do this. Maybe now I did this the last time and the previous one and the previous one. So maybe now you can do this. And she started putting that into action and with a real renewed sense of energy for being able to do that and for setting the path that she believes is the right path for her.
Together, these women, they build up their strength and they rediscover together their personal power. Love it. Thank you. Mark, I'd like to hear from you as well. Do you have an example of such a kind of turning point?
Yes, of course, Veronique. Thank you. The story I want to share with you today is let's call him Steve. The first time I meet with Steve is, in fact, on my screen, as I'm in Paris, but he's in São Paulo. Steve is a 45-year-old top executive in a big multinational company. He's extremely committed for years in that company. He's very successful in his role. He's seen as a high potential. He's on a fast trajectory and he's being promoted to a bigger role, moving to Europe, that he will take 3 months later. And this is why we meet, because he wants me to help him to get on board his new job and make a fantastic start. So that's how the coaching starts. We have the 2 first sessions remotely, as he's still in Sao Paulo. And after the summer, we have finally the 3rd session face-to-face. And I'm very happy because I'm curious to meet the real one, not the screen, Steve. And bang.
Bang? What do you mean? What happened?
I mean that, the first thing that Steve tells me in that session is, Mark, I'm not going to take the job that we've been working on and that was planned.
All changed then.
All changes because, in fact, suddenly I've got a different Steve in front of me because this for him adds a lot of complexity. He has to go for an even bigger role. He will change business division. He will work for somebody he doesn't know, his new boss, who has not chosen him because he was selected by the president. He has to be based on the company headquarters in another country, and he will be forced to commute, being away from family 4 nights a week. Suddenly, the Steve I've got in front of me is a different one. He feels pain. Pain in the job, pain in the relationship, and pain in his family life. I can really touch all these multiple imbalances in him. And if I've got an image, I would say it's like, a self-sacrifice who is starting now in his new job.
Ooh, so what did you do as a coach to help him?
Well, the first step was really helping him to identify why he was feeling such a discomfort, such a pain. And digging together, we found out that the main source of that discomfort came from his definition of loyalty. And loyalty was so strong as a value for him as a sign of his own identity.
Loyalty, you mean loyalty to whom?
It was loyalty just as a value. And in fact, for him, being loyal was meant for Steve that he had always to be available for his team members or that he should never, ever disappoint his boss. So that was really triggering behaviors, having a tendency for Steve to always say yes easily, because he told me that saying no would immediately trigger strong negative feelings, such as guilt versus the team or betrayal versus his boss. So having identified that, we came to a second step, which was really going deeper. So it was like, for me and him, like a deep dive together. So I asked him to make an inventory of all his fears. And having done that, the next step was going through that list with him, helping him to realize how self-limiting these fears were, recalibrating them, enabling to identify a much wider safe zone was really paramount in that coaching. Because then he let go old images of his identity, leaving space for new ones. That step was really a reconnection with himself and with his deepest motivations.
Is it what you call a turning point, right?
I think that was a turning point, but what you make out of a turning point. So there was a third step, which was really going higher, pushing Steve to design solutions and dare to use them on a daily life. So having gone through the second step gave Steve a lot of added serenity. And having recovered that serenity and that clarity, he found that he could use a lot of new weapons, such as humor and courage. So it enabled him first to go straight to his boss and to connect with him in a much more open and strong relationship.
You're talking about weapons. I can't help but connecting with what Anna said earlier with personal power. Yeah. So you're using the same kind of...
that's really... I'm really talking about powerful tools. Yeah. That's really what I mean. So for him, it opened a way to dare to say no without feeling disloyal. So he was able to set up limits and boundaries with bosses and teams. He was, in fact, as you said, exercising his new power to redefine the scope and introduce new ways of working.
What about Steve today? Any news from him?
Yes, of course, Veronique. In fact, I had a wonderful coffee time with him last week. And Steve explained to me how he had been able to redefine his job and set up his conditions to really make it work. Including them, there was the fact that now he's only 3 nights away from family because he's working much more remotely. So I really found a Steve that had recovered his balance, and it showed.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Anna. I love your stories. They are very inspiring. May I ask you, Anna, what stands out for you?
You know, Veronique, one of the key things that stood out to me was the importance of this discovery or rediscovery of personal power. And this can be the personal power to design a North Star for you, or to have your own voice heard, to set boundaries like Steve did, or to make a really powerful, liberating decision like Susan or Jennifer from my group of women. But actually the fact that managers, leaders, have more freedom than they think, even in those moments when you feel stuck sometimes or even powerless in your organization. And what's interesting about this is that this is the kind of leadership that your organization actually needs and wants to see from you. This is the leadership that you need to display and demonstrate. So this is a really key highlight for me from these stories.
That you have more freedom than what you think, and that you have more margin of maneuver in organization. Yeah. What about you, Mark? Anything that stands out from what we shared?
What comes to my mind, Veronique, is really, I think that there is no turning point without a trigger point. Okay, for Steve and other people, it's uncomfortable. It has maybe the taste of failure, but you can really do something positive out of that pain. And this is where a coach helps, because you're not alone to go through, and that really helps.
Yeah, thank you. I love your points on personal freedom, personal power, and on trigger points that can be a bit negative sometimes. Something else as well that I would add is us as coaches, actually our role is to help our coaches to search, to look for their personal power and to identify the problem or challenge they have, but actually spending their energy into finding a solution, and not the other way around. We're coming to the end of this podcast. All those discoveries that you told us about today through your coaching, they can come to life when there is a real investment of time and effort in self-awareness, isn't it? And this is the reason why we at Turning Point, we cherish our motto: if you want to go higher, go deeper. And to all of you who are listening, the Steves, the Jennifers, the Susans, I have a question for you. In your current situation, wherever you are, whatever you go through, what is the turning point that you can seize and embrace for a real change? I'm leaving you with this question, and thank you so much, Anna. Thank you, Mark, for joining me today. And to all of you who are listening, thank you and see you soon.